Hey everybody, it's Dick here. Today I'm looking at the Mutt Hilts. The Mutt Hilts is a Birmingham-dressed, Chinese-built, licensed Japanese Suzuki 125cc single-cylinder, fuel-injected 4-stroke engine, belting out a whopping 12 horsepower. It has 5-speed gearbox and a claim top speed of 70 miles an hour. It has Euro 4 compliant dual disc brakes, 18-inch spoked wheels, front and rear wrapped in chunky knobby tires. It has LED turn signals and rear taillight, a bespoke sewn seat, high-rise bars, custom paint, and a couple of other little appointments that just make this bike catch the eye and force you to take a closer look. It has the classic look of a 60s British motorcycle, which makes Mutt the leading company currently getting rich off of these imported Chinese blanks around which a small cottage industry has cropped up in recent years. I've always wondered why entry-level bikes look cheap, and I'm optimistic that Mutt and their competitors may have convinced the industry that cheap doesn't have to look cheap. Not that £3,500 for a 125 is cheap. The components in the cockpit look of a high quality, and Mutt has splurged for a branded Speedo that is stylish and smaller than the stock Chinese one shipped with the blanks. This is one of the finishing touches that sets Mutt apart from its competitors, as well as making Mutts more expensive than the other Chinese clones on the market. It's a handsome motorcycle, and I'm smitten with the style. Let's take it for a ride and see if it's worth the money and the hype.
Hey everybody, it's Dick here. Today I'm riding the Mutt Hilts 125. It sounds like a big old bad bike if it wasn't for the 125 thumping away between my legs. I've been curious about these bikes for a while. I do like small displacement bikes, and I have a beloved 1975 CB125S, which can do anything I've ever asked it to do. It's a funny little bike, this. It has the look of a full-size bike. It has kind of the feel of a full-size bike, but it's just a 125, and it's not really tuned any differently than any other 125 I've ridden, but there's something very grown-up. I say grown-up, it's not really grown-up, because when you're on this you feel like a hooligan. You feel like a punk kid that's just stolen somebody's motorcycle. It doesn't feel like a learner bike. It doesn't feel like a bike that you're going to grow out of. It's almost like a bike that you regress to. There's a straightaway here, a little bit of an uphill. The power is it's not fast. I mean, it doesn't run like charging horses. It actually feels like it's struggling a little bit up this hill. But it doesn't feel any worse than the V-Strom 250 that I rode that Suzuki offers. But it's fun. I mean, you come into these turns, even with these knobby tires that they've spec'd out on them, and you feel like you're riding a motorcycle. It doesn't feel like you're riding a little scooter. It doesn't feel like you're riding something that doesn't justify being out on it. Sometimes when you ride 125, it just feels like an appliance. This is not an appliance. This is a motorcycle. And they've done a good job at making it feel like a motorcycle, even though 125s generally are appliance vehicles. You know, a 125 is a commuter. It's a city commuter. There's nothing cool about a 125. But I think these companies that put these Chinese-made Suzuki clones all throughout England and France to let creative people do creative things to them, I think they've cracked the code between making something cool. I don't know if you can hear it through the microphone, but this exhaust is awesome. It sounds like a big old bike. Oh, suspension's a little stiff. I'm not really expecting a lot from this bike, so really it can only surprise me. I'm expecting disappointments when I get on commuter style or budget bikes. Now, in the terms of 125s and budget 125s, this is not a budget. This is the Mutt Hilts, named after the Steve McQueen character in The Great Escape. It doesn't necessarily look like the bike that the character Hilts used to try and get into Switzerland on, but it has an old school feel to it, so I can see why they're trying that out for size. But, you know, brakes are competent. They don't stop on a dime. You need to plan ahead. But the nice thing about 125 is you never actually get up to any sort of speed to get yourself into serious trouble. Seat height is good. I can put my feet flat on the ground on either side if I need to put my feet down. The seat's comfortable. This is a hand-stitched seat that the folks in Birmingham make for this seat. My ass is a little wet. It feels a little wet. And so I have a sense that this hand stitching is a bit porous and that the foam underneath soaked up and saturated from the rain that we've had recently, and I think it's now squeezing out into my bottom. That's a bit of a concern. You might have to seam seal the stitching to make sure that the seat remains waterproof, or is waterproof. The hand position's comfortable. I feel prominent sitting at this light. Yeah, coming off the light, it's not setting any records. You kind of feel like you're coming up to speed in first, and when you drop it in the second, you kind of have a bit of a power loss. You have to kind of get to know the bike and see where the power band is and see where you can rev it. I'm not a light guy. I'm heavy by conventional standards. So coming up this hill, bike feels a bit strained. Also, they have these big fat knobby tires on this, so you have to get used to riding knobby tires on the pavement. You kind of feel like this click, this little thump when you come off the knobby onto the sidewall a little bit, coming around turns. I'm very high up on this bike. Even though I have a really good seat height, I feel very high up on this bike. I feel very prominent in the road, and the power is enough for me to be moving with this urban traffic. Yeah, brakes are a bit soft, but as long as you're not too reckless, you got enough time to stop. It's dual disc brakes. This is a Euro 4 model. It doesn't have ABS, but it does have that funky dual activation where if you pull the front lever independent of the rear brake pedal, there's a percentage of rear brake that's applied, and vice versa. If you put the rear brake on, there's a percentage of the front brake that's applied. Oh. The rear suspension is pretty stiff. I'm actually quite happy with how the forks are handling. These are just the stock Chinese ones. I think these were an upgrade from previous years. I think they put a higher spec on this model. This is the most recent model. So the front forks don't bother me too much, but those rear, I think I'd put a bit softer suspension on the back if I was going to have this over a long period. But it's really maneuverable. It's really comfortable to ride. I'm very pleasantly surprised by this bike. And I love the sound. And I have to say, there is something to be said when almost everyone you ride by turns and looks. And when you stop and park it up, there is a circle of people around your bike, and they're all interested in what it is you're riding. Struggling up the hill, but not a problem. It's not a speed demon. It feels like a speed demon. It feels like it should be. There's a couple of things about this that, remind me it's not a premium, motorcycle. It's a bit rattly when coming down out of gear. It kind of feels like something's loose underneath me. Yeah, there's a bit of a rattle. It feels like the chain's a little loose, even though it's not. At first I thought the sump guard that's installed on this one was a bit loose, but it's just a bit of play in the gearbox. It definitely has a dirt bike feel to it. I'd love to take this out. I have the sense that I want to take this across a field. Come on, baby, up the hill, up the hill. You can do it. But it's fun as hell. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. I think this is probably the more expensive version of these Chinese British mod Suzukis. I think this retails for $3,500. It's got a nice paint job. It's got a grill on the front. It's got that nice seat, big knobby tires. You're definitely paying for the spec. I think you can get one of these. Oh, it has that. This is very Mutt characteristic, Mutt-like exhaust. But I think you can get one of these Chinese-styled British mod bikes for, I think, about $2,000 starting. This is $3,500. Still, as motorcycles go, it's inexpensive. And 125s is that funny class of motorcycle that really holds its value, because there's a whole troop of people who will never get their full motorcycle license. And so because they're not getting their full motorcycle license, the 125 is really all they can, the choice that they have. And so the nicer the 125, the better to hold its value. So these, the Mutt Mongrel, I think, goes for about $2,900 or something, and a couple years old. Like some of the oldest mongrels I've seen online are still holding at around $2,000 for a previously owned one. So it's a reasonably sound investment if you're going to buy, a bike. I was talking to someone who has a Sinus version of this bike, and we were talking about how they feel like big bikes, how they feel like full-size bikes. And really, I think it comes down to, and I think we agreed on this point, it comes down to the fact that in front of you, there's quite a lot of bike. There's a nice big wheel, there's a headlight that goes out on that bracket, your handlebars are properly full-size handlebars, the tank has a good tank length coming out from between your legs, and really the small, compact nature of the bike happens all behind you. So it feels like you're on a full-size bike in front of you, where your field of vision tracks. But if you were to put your hand back, you would be touching essentially the back of the frame, the back of your seat and the back of the frame. It's not saying you can't squeeze a pillion on this, you certainly could, but really this bike is not long, which makes it very maneuverable and really very manageable for it being a small bike. And people who ride 125s generally are learners or new riders, so that's really a good thing. It's getting them confident in a big feeling bike, but has the nature of a small bike. But really, it's so much fun to ride. It's just, I've been riding this for a little over an hour now, and I have no interest in getting off it. There's some nice appointments to it too. They have this like little clock here that's branded, and they have LED lights, LED turn signals. This one has a yellow light on the front of it. It looks kind of military. I don't know why, I'm drawn to the military-looking motorcycles, even though I'm generally a pacifist. But the aesthetic, you can't beat it, actually. A little backfire there, that was cool. I do love the noise of this. My ass is wet from that squelching seat. That's a bit of a disappointment for the extra that you pay for the custom seat. Yeah, even on this hill it's pulling, that's fine. Come on. Put some weight on the front wheel. Standing up, yeah, you want to ride this like a dirt bike. Taking my weight off the back wheel too also makes it a bit more peppy. Nice. This is fun. If you see the bumps coming, just put a little pressure on those foot pegs. You put a little pressure on those foot pegs, it takes some of the edge off of your hard suspension. And really, that's how you should be actively riding your motorcycle anyway. You should be not just sitting passively on it, waiting to take it in the ass. You know, you ride a motorcycle kind of like you ride a horse. So those stirrups aren't there just so your feet don't dangle. Your stirrups are there because you're clenching the horse between your thighs, and you're really pushing off those stirrups. And that's how you have to ride a motorcycle. You push against those pegs, and it takes some of the edge off, and you're more actively engaged in the act of riding a motorcycle. And the more actively engaged you are, the safer you're going to be. Because this bike is so comfortable, and I want to ride it for long periods of time, that means I want to put some distance on it. I might want to go on a little road trip on it. And if I want to go on a road trip on the bike, you know, there's only so many places you can go on back roads in England. At some point you reach a dual carriageway, and that's the only road that you can take. And so seeing if this could handle on the carriageway is a valuable bit of info. Yeah, it's really comfortable. I mean, these flat seat bikes, these kind of heritage looking bikes have these flat seats, and generally those flat seats and that kind of flat railed frame does a number on my lower back. But even with this stiff suspension, I'm not feeling strained. And these handlebars are just such a comfortable position. So because, you know, what these little bikes do to make you feel big is they put these wide bars on, and sometimes even the littler bikes are more disconcerting, filtering than, you know, your bigger bike. And I have a sense that that one felt a little tight through there. Felt a little tight through that filter. So these wide bars help you feel like you're riding a full-size bike, but they don't really help in your filtering. I mean, it wasn't impossible, and you know, in all situations you got to decide whether filtering is appropriate or not, but these wide bars felt a little tight through that line of traffic. And usually that's one of the tricks that bike builders do to make you feel like their bike is bigger than it is. And they're not missing the trick on the Mutt. I know the Mongrel, those handlebars are like a meter wide. They're massively wide. These don't feel that bad. Yeah, too tight through here. Alright, we're going to get this 125 out on this dual carriageway. People are going national speed limit on this thing. We'll see if we can hold our own on the 125. I'm already in top gear coming on the slip road. I don't want to strain this too much. When you don't have a power band to speak of, you know, your vulnerability comes from your inability to accelerate. You know, 125s are slow, and that slowness can be dangerous. So I'm up to 40 miles an hour. 45, that guy's blowing by at 70. Yeah, Yeah, doing all right. You're not setting any records. I feel comfortable out here. I feel comfortable enough to stay on it and not bail. I could go a lot faster than I have been going on this. I hit about 50 miles an hour coming uphill on that. With all these cars moving at speed, it's pretty congested. I feel really comfortable out here. That is a really nice feeling. So yeah, if you had the time and the patience, you could take this on a dual carriageway for a longer ride. I mean, it'd take longer for you to get there because you're not going 60, 70 miles an hour, but you definitely are able to stay up with traffic, feel like you have a prominence on the road. I do like these side view mirrors. There's no vibration on them whatsoever. Some people call them Mickey Mouse ears. They go up high and they're big and round, but they go right off the side of my shoulders, and there's no vibration to them whatsoever. They're just fixed. I have a clearer view out of these mirrors than I do on either of my other bikes. I'm not uncomfortable out here in any respect. Suspension's getting a little stiff as the day's getting longer. Getting a little tired, but you know, I could ride this bike longer, and I have ridden this bike longer than a lot of the other bikes I've been riding lately. I've been getting tired on some bikes. This bike does not fatigue you in any way. You're not working to ride this bike. You can work it. You have to go through the gears, up and down through the gears a bit more than kind of a mid-range bike. You know, that's the nature of a 125. You know, you have to work through the gears to find where that power is. But, you know, being an active rider, you're going to be a better rider being an active rider. So really learning on a smaller displacement bike where that power lives. When you get into a bigger bike, you're going to have that experience and you're going to have that knowledge. But, you know, even with working through all of the gears, I'm not tired riding this bike. The seating position is really comfortable here. The foot pegs are in a really great place. My knees are nearly, if not exactly 90-degree angle down to the foot pegs to my hips. So there's a really great bend in my knee. I feel really comfortable on this bike. And I have a lot of seat in which to move forward and back on. I can really come back on, I can really move forward on. So there's a lot of movement fore and aft and side to side on this seat. So it's a really comfortable ride. And through these little roads, I mean, this thing is just wicked. I'm really learning where the power lives on this engine too, and where on the rev range. There's no tachometer on it. It's too simple. It's got this tiny little speedometer, odometer thing on it, which prioritizes kilometers. Despite the fact that Mutt is a Birmingham company and has branded that dial there, it prioritizes kilometers on it. But so there's no tachometer. The first bike I've ever ridden didn't have a tachometer, so don't miss it. You learn to read. You learn to listen to the engine. But how awesome is this? Just feels like you're riding your first little two-stroke through a farm, and everyone you ride by cranes their neck at it. Awesome. Great little bike.
If you like that video and you want to see more like them, hit like, share, and subscribe.